following is an excerpt from a conversation I had with a Ben Wallace and Detroit Pistons collector named Josh, who goes by mittenstatecollector on Instagram. At the end of our conversation, I asked him to share his 3 favorite cards. So I've added some visuals to go along with that clip, and I hope you enjoy. Let's start with number 3, and then we'll end with number 1.
Sure. So I really kind of struggled to only pick 3, of course. I mean, I think for anyone who's collected for any duration of time, there's a lot of great stories, and the emotional component to collecting is just as strong as looking at the physical card. The one that I'll say is number 3 for me right now is it's a game worn letter from 2007 Topps Letterman of Isaiah Thomas. It's got the superfractor pattern. But it's one of the few true game-worn full letter patches that he has. And so for me, Isaiah's, is the quintessential bad boy from the 80s squad. And so that he represents that era for me. And then I wanted to pick something that goes into the 90s. And then my third card will be for the 2000s. So I thought that was a good way to kind of look at my collection. The thing that I wanted to represent for the 90s is my 1997 PMG Red Dumars. It feels cliche to say, oh, it's a PMG Red. Of course it's a great card, but for me it was really what it represents in terms of me taking a leap as a collector to say I'm letting go of a lot of really great cards just to get one in return. And I've always approached collecting from the standpoint, I pay attention to value. I'm not going to give away a $1,000 card to get a $5 card in return, but also wanting to be very intentional about the cards that I'm getting back and being able to recognize this is a card you can't acquire anyway. I don't have the cash to hand out over for one of these. And so for me, it's a tangible reminder that like sometimes you've got to let things hurt a little bit in your collection, things that you're going to miss. But then you have, of course, this great new card that hopefully fills most of that void by the cards that are departing.
Well, and then you might even see in the future that, like, hey, that actually, aside, even though you justified it in your mind, it might even make more sense objectively later on. I had a card this week that there was a card that I traded for at the National. It was a cash card trade. And I gave up a lot, and I even felt it. And I knew I gave up a lot. And the person I traded with, they knew that I gave them a lot, but that was really the only way it was going to happen. Well, another copy of that finally comes up for sale long after I made that trade, and it went for higher than what I gave up. So, at the end of that, I thought, okay, well, I had already come to peace with what I had done to get it, but it's like, okay, maybe that wasn't so bad after all. Even when things are cooling off, that one went at an all-time high. So you've got that Dumars. He's in that teal uniform. You explained your connection to Dumars earlier. I think that was a great move on your part, and I love all the story behind that.
Well, let me bend your ear for one more slightly longer story for my number 1 card, which is a 2004 Fleer Sweet Sigs Ben Wallace logo man. It's probably the most unlikely card in my collection. And I'll try to give you a very brief version of why that is. And it's because this card came up on eBay when I was out with my wife a couple of years ago because her refrigerator had broken.
Okay.
And so for once in my life, I was not glued to my phone looking at, paying attention to alerts or anything else. I was looking at refrigerators and
about to spend a bunch of money too.
About to spend a lot of money on a refrigerator. And it just so happened at one point, we're getting close to lunch, I pulled out my phone and I had basically been blown up on Instagram by Big Ben PC. And he's like, dude, like, look at this listing. Like wanted a logo man, like, here's a logo man. It just listed like, message the seller. And, it was one of those, it was high for the time, but not unrealistically. So it was one of those things where like you probably submit an offer and like hold your breath and try not to hit the buy it now button while you're waiting to hear back.
Right. You give yourself, I'll be like, I'm giving this 30 minutes and then I'm hitting the bin.
And importantly, it had the photos of the back, so you could tell that was an actual pack issued copy. The
Mhm.
2004 Fleer sets are rife with fake patches and so on. And this one, luckily, there'd been one other one that sold fairly recently, so you could still see on eBay. I think it was a Vince Carter, but you could see the placement of where the stamp was and compare the font and do a little bit more. So you felt pretty confident. Well, by the time I got on eBay, had sold.
Mm.
And so I waited till I got home. I checked out Worth Point or 130 Point, and it went for a very reasonable amount. And so I was just like, I was shaking my head, and I reached out to the seller, I messaged him, and I said, look, if see you accept an offer, they don't pay, like I'm your guy, like I will do that. And turned out he did pay, so I had the seller send my information to the person who bought it, and I just said, like, respectfully, if you ever, tell them if you ever decide to sell it, there's a guy who's willing to basically allow himself to be gouged to a certain extent
Yeah.
for this card. And turned out guys from Michigan, and very friendly, polite. He said, yep, I saw the card. I thought it was a good price, so I wanted to buy it. Well, a couple months after that, he hits me up on Instagram, and he's like, "Hey, I'm a, I think he collects Tom Brady before it was fashionable to collect Tom Brady,
Hmm.
and he had gotten some key memorabilia pieces that were at one of the big auction houses, and he said, I remember you said that you were interested in this card. I have some stuff that I is more key to my collecting that I'd like to get, and so here you go." And so we were able to work out a deal and do do a deal for that, and it's been in my collection ever since. And I could not believe the dumb luck, of all the times you send the message of, hey, if you're going to sell this, let me know, and it's just like never pans
Never.
out.
Right. That's what I was going to
And
say. Never work.
and then the funny thing is too is the seller had said, oh, I took this lower offer too because the card has some chipping on it, and I just wanted to be fair with the price. And I thought, of all the you know, of all the like grail level cards for a player collector, not only do you get a guy who starts off with a reasonable asking price, is also willing to negotiate fairly based on the card's condition.
Right.
But again, I still can't believe it all worked out for that, because again, that's a card that I think if it came up for auction now would go for, an amount. Again, I just could not possibly justify paying a cash price for. So that's super special to me.
Well, the timing was right. And even, you made it despite the refrigerator breaking down. I'm assuming you got the refrigerator replaced as well. We're able to spread all those funds out and everything worked out for you.